You can.
We'll go ahead and get started. It's actually a little past 8:35. Remember to turn off your phones or anything else that's prone to making noise. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Bell,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Freeling, Harrison,
Here.
Enkelman, Majerick, Martin,
Here.
Scott,
Present.
Walraff, Werfel, Yarborough,
Present.
Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 10 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Minutes were sent out from a week ago. Any changes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted by the clerk?
So moved.
Moved by Scott, supported by Walrath. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. I have a feeling we have some requisitions.
Just a few. Does anybody have any questions about the requisition list that was sent out? No? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Wanna roll into it? Okay. We have guests this morning. We have Tricia Johnson, Paula Nelson, and Lauren Hamill, who are going to talk with us about some potential good things in the offing. Dr. Hamill.
Thank you very much. We have a screen behind you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Lauren Hamill. I have also Dr. Melinda Gruber with me here. She is the vice president that has responsibility over a lot of our post-acute services. I'm at Lakeland, and I have Jessica Springer here, who's my advisor, and running the PowerPoint show. I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about some incredibly valuable services that are going on right now at the old Ben and General Hospital site that are at great risk. And they're great risk from a facility standpoint. So we'll share that with you and then take any comments or questions. You want to give us the next slide here? So the services out there are Serenity Hills, run by Sacred Heart. They have 28 beds for inpatient substance abuse treatment. They do detoxification as well, 12 beds, as well as substance abuse outpatient services and peer support. They employ about 30 folks in our county. Next slide. Here are some of the statistics related to the services they offer. They have 1,100 admissions. They've treated 600 individuals. You'll notice that some of that is residential, 55%, some is detoxification services. The services are more to men than to women, about 2/3 men. You'll see that the racial distribution of those services is pretty close to the distribution of in our population. So, this cuts across all racial and ethnic demographics. You also see the age spread there. The average length of stay that somebody's in for residential service is 12 days, and it's about 4 days for detoxification. Next slide. You'll see a spread of where those services, where patients utilizing those services come from. You'll see that the vast majority is in Berrien County, but we serve southwestern Michigan. That's important because it's hard to find these services, and we are fortunate in our county to have them available. There are many counties that don't. When we find somebody in our emergency room that needs these services, if we did not have Serenity Hills in our neighborhood, it'd be extremely hard to find places for them to go. Next slide. Here is kind of the impact on substance abuse disorder on an emergency room. And you can see that about 6% of all of our visits have some link to substance abuse. I mean, it's incredibly common presenting complaint in emergency departments. And you can see that that's growing over time. Next slide. Here's a zip code distribution of where we're serving our friends and neighbors. You can see by far and away, Benton Harbor leads that list. We're serving a lot of Benton Harbor residents, followed by Niles. And then you can see the spread across the rest of Berrien County. You can also see how that's trended over the last 3 years. Next slide. Overdose visits in our emergency room, which of course are related to substances. are very significant. It's a significant cause of mortality, including among our young, and is one of the reasons that substance abuse is so tragic. Next slide. Here are substance abuse related deaths trended over the last 5 years. And you can see alcohol is still a leading cause of death related to substance use. But it cuts across all the other medications you would suspect. Likely on here, one of the emerging threats across the country is fentanyl. We are getting fentanyl largely across our southern border at levels sufficient to kill every man, woman, and child in all of the US. I mean, just enormous amount. It takes very little fentanyl to kill a lot of people. It's a very, very potent drug. And across, particularly now in the Southwest United States, that's becoming a leading cause of death, overdose death, is the very powerful fentanyl that's entering the country. Next slide. We have worked to support various things related to mental health services. We, substance abuse services, we don't provide them in-house. It's not a skill set, but we have contributed to Carol's Hope. We're doing a fair amount of activity referring folks with substance abuse at our Center on Wellness. We have contributed about $2 million since Sacred Heart opened their Serenity Hills doors and bearing a couple $1 million of support on the facility side. Next slide. So this is the Old Barium General Hospital site, and we didn't just look for bad pictures. It is at end of life, and there's just no question about that. You could not return this building to usable shape without really tearing it down and rebuilding it. And of course, that's just a really expensive thing to do. You can see some of our release and subsidy activity there. Next slide. This is one of the architectural renderings of something we might do for Serenity Hills. There may be some other choices, but you can see here, minimum about 14,000 square feet. And if you were to build that at today's cost, that would be $5.5 million. So it's one of the things on our drawing board. Next slide. So the personal impact is just profound. Here is one of the letters that our friends at Serenity Hills got. Knowing people as nice as you gives life a brighter touch. And you can see just a very glowing letter. And these are common. I think we have, do we have a video clip next? Let's share a video clip of a life impacted.
Early on, I started using substances and I was introduced to the criminal justice system. 2 years of probation, and then I was sent to prison for 2 years because of positive drug tests, and then 3 years of parole. In 2017, I was off of parole and I decided to call for myself, and I went to Sacred Heart. It was like I was a part of my recovery. I was, what kind of life did I want? You know, they asked me and they helped me to reach my goals. Just that introduction of love and meeting me where I'm at and being treated like I was a person, like I was a human, and I wasn't a criminal because I had a disease. It really just motivated me and helped me to be hopeful. In October, I'll be sober 5 years since I've been a client at Serenity Hills. And 2 years ago, I became a peer recovery coach at Sacred Heart. I want people to know that there's a different way. For so long, I would say, like, in my mind, I know this sounds silly, but like, I want to go home. But I didn't know where home was. And I just want other people to know, you know, that there's a different way. Everyone in recovery, we might think that we're just one little piece, but when we stand up and we advocate and we gain credibility through becoming productive members of our community, that's where these things stop, and we help our next generations heal.
So that is a perfect example of why these kinds of services are just so incredibly important in our community. It is rare to have a family of any size where you don't have substance abuse disorder within the family. Sometimes we know about them, sometimes we don't, but the disorder is incredibly common. And these services, in this case, obviously help protect her freedom, kept her out of jail. But these kinds of services protect our jobs, protect our families, our relationships, our children, and are critical to saving lives. Substance abuse is not a money-making business. You can't put up a shingle, build an expensive building, and cash flow. It's just impossible. Particularly since our friends at Sacred Heart are committed to take care of the whole community, not just those that are wealthy, not just those that are well insured, but everybody. And that is a really heavy lift when you're taking care of folks with no resources and often with no insurance. If we're going to have these services continue in our community, I believe we're going to have to come together and help support it. And that may be through grant writing, that may be through earmarks, that may be through philanthropy, and it certainly will be with the help of Lakeland. We've been committed to make sure these services are available with our community, have been very blessed by the relationship with Sacred Heart and the Serenity Hills facility that they've placed in our neighborhood, and it would be tragic to lose them. So I just want to alert you to we're at a critical juncture right now with the facility that can no longer support them. And we'll have to find other options urgently to make sure that we don't lose those, and those will be expensive options, but to make sure we don't lose those services. So with that, anything, Paula or Tricia, that I missed that you need to?
I think you did an excellent job. I'm Paula Nelson. I'm the CEO at Sacred Heart. We've been over in Marion County since 2014. We were fortunate that Dr. Hamill helped bring us over to your community. We were providing many more services prior to the pandemic. So when you see 600 plus individuals, that number was over 1,000 prior to 2020 per year that we were able to serve. We are committed to staying in the community. We just need some help to find a new facility. And of course, as everyone knows, right now is a terrible time to build, right? Because of the cost of everything. So any support that we can get, as Dr. Hamill said, from foundations, from the county, from surrounding counties, we're definitely going to be looking everywhere. You have anything? No? Thank you.
Ma'am?
Any questions?
Yes.
Yes, I don't understand who's connected. I know Lakeland. I know Spectrum Lakeland. I read in the paper where there are 2 or 3 other names in the front of your name. So, and I know you. And so
In terms of Lakeland or in terms of the
I'm
relationship?
just saying, who are we dealing with? Is Spectrum over
So we,
Sacred Heart?
no, we've been the landlord, basically.
Okay.
And we're subsidizing heavily to make sure those services are available in our community. But Sacred Heart is an independent 501(c)(3) and has experience in doing this on the east side of the state. And we were just fortunate to forge a relationship and have them join this side of the state. Healthcare is in a bit of a new era. And that is not just what we provide as a healthcare organization, but what do we help support? And how do we create partnerships that give the full spectrum of health-related services in a community? And so we don't own them. We're just here to help. And we've been the landlord. And I suspect in the next round, it won't be likely our building, one that but we're certainly going to be helpful financially.
So Sacred Heart Rehabilitation Center has been around for 55 years. We have 11 locations around the state. This location in Berrien Center is called Serenity Hills. So that might be some of the confusion. Sacred Heart is the organization, but this program over here is called Serenity Hills.
So if we were to come together as a community and fund the construction of a facility, how financially viable is the model in the coming years? I see a couple issues. One being clearly the physical plant, but also ongoing support for this type of services.
Yeah, so as Dr. Hamel said, there's no money in this. We've lost money since 2014 over here, but we have 11 locations and we have a commitment to our original mission of helping individuals with limited means. So some of our sites do better and some don't do so well. And so we offset the sites that are losing money by the ones that are doing well. And we've made a commitment to this community. We don't want to go anywhere. And we are prepared to sign a long-term lease if we're not the owner of the building.
That's a Dr. Harris, that's a great question. As you know, our community, when you compare it across Michigan, is a bit poorer than average. Our commercially insured patient mix is a bit lower than average. The proportion that are uninsured or on Medicaid are higher than average. That makes running healthcare services very challenging. And that is where philanthropic support and grant support and partnerships like we have with Lakeland and Serenity Hills is just so vital, or else we just would not have the services.
Yes, sir. Yes, I have had family and friends. I think it's a great service, especially in the Marion County, because I don't think there's many services.
There's no residential.
No detox or residential in the county.
They've had to go to other states. So how, do you interact with Riverwood at all?
We do. So they primarily provide mental health services, of course, but they do have some outpatient services. So we typically refer quite a few individuals that are in close proximity to Riverwood to them for outpatient services.
And they the reverse for substance abuse. Collaborative.
Yes, sir. I didn't notice the graphs or whatever. Maybe I wasn't able to understand the graphs totally. What is the success rate out there at Sacred Heart? And what is the recidivism rate? Do you know?
So it's somewhat difficult to follow individuals. I can tell you that out of our residential programs, we see about 55% of them that complete that level of care. And then, of course, the majority of them are referred to outpatient and recovery support services after they leave the intensive services. But some of them do come back through. It's difficult to track people long-term.
Certainly the national literature says this is a difficult problem to treat. And the success is not like an appendectomy. You know, there are many folks that struggle and some return to care, return for care. You know, various rates quoted on that, but it wouldn't be surprising to have many folks have to have 2 rounds through a substance abuse treatment program, and some more. And some, of course, have success on the first round. From what we have seen as referring into those services, they're as capable and competent as any place we refer to. The results are certainly comparable with any place in the country, but it's a difficult disorder.
And we don't close our doors. So if somebody has to come back, they can come back 5 times, 10 times. We're not going to give up on them. We want to give them something that they can take with them that will help them to live a normal life like everybody else. So, and we deal with the public funding, as Dr. Hamel said, Medicaid. That's the majority of our business. It's close to 90% of our revenue is Medicaid funding. We also have contracts with all 10 of the public regional entities around the state of Michigan that administer the Medicaid dollars for behavioral health services. So we definitely have a lot of experience.
And as you can imagine, serious substance use disorder is incompatible with employment. You know, they will lose their jobs ultimately. That will get in the way, and is usually incompatible with relationships, marital relationships with parents. That's what makes this such kind of a compelling mission. As you saw in this example, you took somebody who has spent time in jail and was unemployed and not functioning well, and is now employed and giving back to their community. And a lot of success stories like that. So that's what gives us hope. I'm willing to send somebody 3 times if they need it, and to help pay for it if they need it, to save life.
I have one other question. With you being a nonprofit, don't you have a lot of opportunities out there for grants for a facility like this, a new facility like this? I mean, like, would you have a more opportunity for grants than the actual county does?
That's a good question. You would think so, but the problem is a lot of grant funding does not pay for construction of new facilities. Grant funding, typically what they want to see is they want you to start up a new program, but they don't want to pay for the bricks and mortar piece of it. So that's where we struggle.
And even with those kinds of grants, they're often for startup programs. They'll give you a nice kickstart, but you have to figure out how to operationally support it after 2 years or 3 years. And so you may be making commitments. You take 2 million here, but it might take 10 million of support over 10 years to keep it running. The grants that we often participate as Lakeland are usually markedly enhanced if 2 or 3 or 4 partners have signed on the bottom in some way of support, that this is something we're working on together. You're more likely to compete in the grant world when it's just not an individual organization saying, can you help? And we can look together, so another discussion, look together and say, what are those opportunities? Even with looking for earmarks, the more folks on the signature line across the community, the more likely we'll get the funds.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it came to me, I don't quite know. Is there enough, are there enough patients and enough dollars to make it run, to keep it running? Is it in a deficit?
Well, we certainly have done that for 5 or 6 years now,
Correct.
in a very tired facility. So yes, there are enough patients to make it work. And all those required some subsidy. That's the price of substance abuse care at this point. There's no way. So let me give you maybe another example. We subsidize OB in this county to the tune of about $6 million a year. You cannot deliver babies in a hospital and make money. It's impossible. That's a really valuable service, delivering babies.
Yes.
We would never stop delivering babies. We figure out a way on how you cross-subsidize to make sure you're delivering babies well across your community. And that's kind of the way healthcare is organized. It's sad, but true. Mental health services have been grossly underfunded for years. Some of that is reversing now. That's a good thing. Substance abuse disorders have been underfunded. And so we just all come together and say, how do we make it work?
Thank you.
Anyone? Jim and then Ray.
Okay, thank you, Meg. Does SWIMBA play a part
Yeah.
in what you do?
Absolutely.
Okay, what other organizations? I heard Commissioner Majerick asked about Riverwood
Mhm.
and SWIMBA. Give me
Yeah.
an idea of some other
SWIMBA for
organizations.
this region is our main funding source. So so for the behavioral health benefits, for the Medicaid and individuals that have no insurance, which is called block grant funding, all those individuals will contact Southwest Michigan Behavioral Health first. And that's SWIMBA.
Gotcha.
And they do the referrals. They're the access center for this area of the state, and they refer to us.
Great, thank you.
Ray.
What's the ideal location for it to be at the same spot?
You know, and I've been asked that many times because our other detox and residential facilities are on a campus somewhat like where we're at right now, out in Berrien Center. There's pros and cons. There's pros of being in a very rural area, so a serene setting, and it's harder for individuals to say, I'm not gonna do this, I wanna leave, because it's not easy to access. But then there are some cons to it too. It's hard to access for some individuals. If we were closer to a city, it's easier for people to obtain transportation to get to our services. So it just, there's pros and cons to both a rural and urban setting.
Jim.
That prompted a follow-up question. Can you take patients from out of state?
Well, if they have third-party insurance and if their insurance allows for them to come, we cannot right now take any publicly funded individuals, say from Indiana. We can't do it.
So it pretty much rules Niles out, huh?
Well, but no, Niles, they're residents of Michigan, so.
Right, but I mean, we're so close to the state line.
Yeah.
You can't take South Bend, Mishawaka, Elkhart.
If they're insured.
If they have, Blue Cross, priority, anything like that, then we can work with them. We're not completely paneled for out of state, but we do work out arrangements. But for individuals that have Medicaid in Indiana, we can't take
Do you
those.
do any out of state now?
We occasionally get an individual or two that wants to come up to us, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's especially because where we're located over here, it's
Yeah.
close.
Anyone else?
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
privilege of presenting before you. Thank you for having an interest in the substance abuse needs in the community. If you have any additional questions, we're happy to chat with you about them, and stay tuned. We're going to work hard to find a soft landing place for these valuable services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Mr. Chairman. So Dr. Hamel and the team here presented a similar talk to the admin committee. The admin committee was insistent upon having them come and speak with the full board. Part of that was the motivation was for you all to understand the story, the need from both Lakeland and Sacred Heart. Secondary part was to have this on your radar as it relates to site planning. So in the past week, the board has authorized an agreement with Whiteman and Associates /DLR to begin the site planning effort for the juvenile center. The admin committee had a conversation about whether or not there would be some synchronicity between a new juvenile center and a treatment facility. No action is being sought from the full board today. However, Whiteman is watching this presentation. They are aware that there could be a need for additional site planning. Whiteman is preparing a contract addendum for the board's consideration. Prior to bringing it forward to the board, I'd be following up with Dr. Hamel and the team from Sacred Heart to ask whether or not they'd be willing to participate in a reimbursement agreement should we have Whiteman /DLR take on additional site planning for our Napier site. So the goal today was for you all to hear the story, to understand the need, with the anticipation that we could be coming forward with an ask to formalize a partnership for additional site planning to determine whether or not your Napier site would make sense as a long-term home for treatment services. So before we go any further, I would just ask Mr. Chair if it's okay to have the admin members just offer up their thoughts on why this presentation is occurring today.
Well, I'll start. And I think it was partly because Mamie asked some very good questions. And that's why I wanted the whole board to hear the presentation, to ask the questions that need to be asked. Because the administration committee looks at this as though it's a partnership, falls in line with our mission statement. And if we can make something work, we'd like to do it. And that's why we wanted the whole board to have the information firsthand. Do any of the other committee members want to comment?
I wasn't available.
Michael was going. Can
You guys.
So you have no comment?
I'm glad he was here today, so I could see it in person, because I was sick the last time, so I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, I think this is a very valuable service also within the community, in that we continue and we find a way to make sure that this does happen, because it does serve all of our constituents, all of our residents of the county. And it is an important need, and you guys have very well described and shown that need. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming back today.
My comments echo Jim over there, and I do believe this is very important for our county. I firmly believe that we can work some type of partnerships out with Lakeland and Sacred Heart and the county, to where maybe we can even be a go-between for any type of state funding to help them out too in a grant, like we've done with other items. So
Like a conduit of sorts?
correct. Yeah.
Ray, did you have any? Oh, you're PHS, sorry. Julie? Jim? Dave. Dave have anything?
He wasn't there.
Okay. Ezra, do you have a?
The only thing that concerns me a little bit is I sit on the finance committee, and my term finishes up December 31st, and I'm a little concerned on the actual finances of the county, where the money is going to come from. And it's not just looking at the Sacred Heart. And I understand the need and the desire that we have to provide these services. I think it's vital. And I think, in my opinion, the mental health issues are just, they're going to go up from where we're at right now, today. And I guess I'm just looking at it from a money standpoint also, because we're talking about building a new juvenile center and the cost of that, and then the cost of this. Those are my only comments, basically, is from a financial standpoint, what the county can absorb and still see use the taxpayer dollars and still see fluidity in the county.
Anyone else? Was there any discussion in admin about bonding for construction?
We really didn't get deep into the finances of it because this is just preliminary. This is just a beginning. I think we were basically concentrating on forming that partnership and a location where we're going to, put these facilities. But specifically on bonding, I don't remember any. Brian, you might want to comment on that, but no, we weren't talking bonding.
No, so we have not begun the process of site planning. We certainly don't have any type of construction estimates. I think I'm speaking on behalf of admin, so smack my hand if I'm wrong. I think the concern from admin was, one, would you feel comfortable with the planning exercise? And two, if a portion of the property were to be used for essentially a spec building, would the board feel comfortable if they understood the use and why we would try to reserve some of that property? What Whiteman would be asked to do is lay out the needs for your juvenile center and then the anticipated future use of the property, be it a family court, be it a jail, et cetera. And at some point you are going to run out of space. And so the admin committee saw that there was definitely some advantage to trying to form a partnership, but I think there was also some caution about how much property be dedicated towards this project, knowing that more than likely you're going to have additional facilities built in the next 10 to 20 years at that site. Jim, was there general agreement with that concern?
Yeah, that pretty well says it, Mac. That's pretty much what we talked about.
This is the Napier Avenue site, Napier Road. Okay, do we own the building that currently is occupied by Riverwood?
By Riverwood?
No.
Who does? Is that privately owned and they lease it to the state?
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to our capital needs analysis. Riverwood was not one of our buildings.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Always, I don't know the name of it, but they build things. They build what you want. I know the family name. I can't think of that either. Used to be.
Gianelli?
No. But they used to have Man Alive and all those things.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
That family starts with a B. Publix. Thank you. The Publix.
I'll never forget what's his name. So.
Yeah, the Publix. They build what you want.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to point out, we're obviously very appreciative of any conversation with the county and how there may be synergies with site planning and want to make sure that we've talked about that. And we could be in a situation where that building fails, where, that plan, we'd have to obviously go alternate directions. Our biggest concern on that facility is that the next failure would be a $2 or $3 or $5 million spend, which is just impossible in a building that age. And so in full transparency, anything we can do collaboratively, we want to do. I think there's been synergy between the juvenile center and what we're doing there. And we've in conversations about what we can do to be helpful to keep that site viable for the juvenile center, even if we've, had to vacate the old hospital. So it'll be completely collaborative there, but we might get surprised and have to adjust our timelines, even though we're trying to work hard together. So I just would put that out there.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll be following up, I'm sure. To keep on schedule with committees, let's do public comment and then we'll break. Any public comments? Going once, going twice. Okay, no public comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just something, can you come up here to the mic? Well, I did have a comment regarding the situation here.
Name and
Oh, I'm
where.
sorry, Marcia Gorbitz from City of Niles. I'm also a county employee in the Niles Misdemeanor Probation Department. I don't agree, I agree with Ezra as far as the finance part of this. He says he wants to be a landlord, and I don't think the county should have to build a building and then.
Well, I don't want to be a landlord. We are the landlord.
And that's what I'm saying, the county shouldn't have to provide for that when we're already struggling with finances. So I did have that to say on that.
Okay,
I have something totally separate. I know there's like a 2-minute thing, but this is separate. I was a couple weeks ago at the meeting in Niles. I know they did a $1,000 hazard pay for the county employees, which that does not have anything to do with the salary survey that was done in 2019. And again, I'm back asking for an upgrade to the non-union people that have not gotten anything in the past 3 years from the salary survey. And it needs to be addressed. There's a lot of people that aren't happy. I'm basically speaking on behalf of some of them because they can't come to the meetings. I just happened to be on vacation this week. I could. And I think there needs to be some retroactive funding for that. You have ARPA money, has 30 million, 6 million accounted, there was 24 million left, and the ARPA can be used to retain employees. I got that from the ARPA site. And that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you. And thank you for sharing part of your vacation with us. Anyone have anything else? Any other business? All right, we'll break at 9:13, come back at 10:30.